The Continental Football League had the hopes of establishing itself as the next alternative football league in the United States, reviving historic brands and implementing an ambitious rulebook that combined traditional American and Canadian football rules. But after weeks of turmoil and news of teams folding left and right, it sadly appears that the CoFL will be ending its season prematurely without making it to their championship game. News that is all too unsurprising for alternative football fans following the story. Howdy, I'm Logan with Alt Football Archive, and today we're catching you up on all the latest news and information surrounding this league's tragic inaugural season, and also covering what might be in store for the future of the CoFL, or if it really is the end for this league. Now, for those who are out of the loop, I'll give a quick explanation of what the CoFL is and how we got here. The Continental Football League, or the CoFL, was announced last year as a startup alternative professional football league, hoping to provide opportunity to players looking to elevate themselves from semi-professional leagues, giving themselves the tape and money they'd need to make the jump to higher levels of professional football, like the United Football League, the Canadian Football League, or the National Football League. This was reflected in their ambitious take on the rules of football, something they called the Continental Shift, where for the first 3 quarters of the football game, they would follow traditional NFL 4-down football. But in the final quarter of the game, the rules would change to follow the faster-paced 3-down football seen in the CFL. This was made to bring about more exciting close finishes, as well as to better prepare players for a potential move to either an American or Canadian Football League. There was tons of excitement surrounding the league and their teams. The Continental Football League traces its history back to the 1960s, where a league of the same name played professionally across the country and played a supplemental role to the big dogs AFL and NFL before they merged to create the modern NFL. Although the modern iteration carries no connection to that previous league beyond the name, they did revive several historic teams from back then. Those teams reborn to represent their markets almost 60 years later. These teams were announced slowly over several months, being separated into a northern and southern division, and being a mix of returning teams from the original Continental Football League, semi-pro teams elevated into professional football for the first time, as well as all new brands. The league also garnered some excitement from fans for targeting smaller, untouched markets, as well as larger markets that were the victim of relocation from the United Football League just a season before. The original 8 teams announced for the inaugural season of the Continental Football League include the San Antonio Toros, an original CoFL team revived to represent the Alamo City after the departure of the UFO Brahmas; the Michigan Arrows, another revived team from the original league looking to fill in where the Michigan Panthers left from the UFL; the Texas Syndicate, an original team representing the Austin Round Rock area, an untouched but growing market in professional sports; the Tall City Black Gold, an original team representing West Texas and Midland; the Ohio Valley Ironmen, a team from the original CoFL representing West Virginia and whose leadership spearheaded the creation of the modern Continental Football League; the Indianapolis Capitols, another revived brand from the original CoFL, who would be representing the bustling city of Indianapolis; the Cincinnati Dukes, an exciting and dominant semi-pro team joining the league to make their jump to the professional level; and the Fort Worth Braves, an original CoFL team revived to represent the thriving Dallas-Fort Worth area. These 8 teams are split into a northern and southern division, but unlike other leagues, they would not play against each other. Each division would play only its divisional rivals, only facing off against an opponent from the other division in the championship game in July, which they called the Continental Cup. This strange scheduling arrangement was made to tackle the cost of travel, since this league was going to be smaller in scale and utilize fan-supported funding to stay in operation. Although unique, this scheduling put great strain on the league, and with later developments, likely made recovering much more difficult, or in some cases, likely impossible. Initially, things looked to be progressing well enough. The league planned an ambitious and quick launch and were signing players while announcing stadium deals and revealing the final teams before kickoff. But despite promising news like UFL caliber and local talent signing with teams, not everything was going well behind the scenes. In a surprise announcement not long before the inaugural season kicked off, the Michigan Arrows announced they would not be able to play in the 2026 season after conflict in their leadership group, as well as them not being able to sign a stadium deal made playing impossible. With this news, 8 teams fell down to 7. The turmoil continued as not much later, another Northern Division team announced their closure. A fellow revived franchise in the Indianapolis Caps Capitols, who also claimed ownership and financing to be to blame for this unfortunate news. The CoFL, quick to settle fears in fans, announced the establishing of 2 ancillary teams to play in their place and who would act as expansion teams for the next season. The first being a revived brand from the original CoFL, the Norfolk Neptunes, who would be replacing the Michigan Arrows, and the all-new Vegas Gamblers, no, not those gamblers, these gamblers, who would be replacing the Caps. That is where the league stood with my previous upload, and we here at the channel hoped that it would be the end of this turmoil, but unfortunately it seems like the writing was already on the wall, especially with the rebranding of the 2026 inaugural season as a preview season. Despite league reassurances and the announcement of these new teams, it seems like things were getting worse for the startup league. Even though the Neptunes and the Gamblers were announced as replacements, these teams never seemed to materialize and ultimately left critical holes in the league schedule. The league continued to schedule semi-pro teams to fill those holes, but just as it seemed one opening was hastily covered, 2 more took its place. Not even a day had passed after my previous upload before another team announced their closure for the 2026 season. This time it was the Fort Worth Braves, who despite showing off a potential uniform, didn't have the backing they needed and closed before their team ever saw the field. This time, the Continental Football League didn't announce a replacement or ancillary team, simply signing the Texas Herd, a semi-pro team that had faced off against other Southern Divisional opponents in the preseason to fill in their spot in the South. With this news, unfortunately, the total tally for teams fell to only 5 remaining in the league. A few weeks of play pass as the season kicks off and there is some stability, but in a shocking announcement, the Ohio Valley Ironmen, the team that founded the league after splitting from the ill-fated International Football Alliance, or IFA, who were the ones to start it all, announced their closure for the 2026 season after failing to receive enough financial sponsorship to support the team. The previous closures came almost entirely from teams that were in the last batch to be revealed, and although tragic, weren't all that unexpected with how little time there was between their announcement and the start of the season. But for the Ironmen, the real OG CoFL team that had months to prepare, this was a terrible sign for the league's future. With their unfortunate closure, the Continental Football League was reduced to only 4 full-time members, which was half of its original intended size, and left the league terribly unbalanced with 3 teams in the South and only a single team remaining in the North. But unfortunately for CoFL fans, the news just kept on getting grimmer. It is with a sad heart that I report that the San Antonio Toros, the team with the most support and the most success in the league, announced that this Sunday, June 28th, their game against the Tall City Black Gold will be their final game of the 2026 season, and unfortunately will be a resounding final nail in the coffin for the CoFL season. The Toros have been on a tear in the league, looking like the most legit team by far. They have had some of the best coverage online from their social media accounts. They have signed some of the highest caliber players with history playing in the XFL, USFL, and UFL, and have no doubt been the toughest team to play in the league, beating opponents regularly by around 8 scores. It has been ridiculous. You'll see scores like in the 50s and the opponent is completely shut out. They've been a force on the field. And when a team is that dominant, if they're throwing in a towel for the season, you really unfortunately know it is over for the league, because if any team has a chance to pull through the season, it would be them. Although this announcement is not what fans wanted to hear, it did give us some greater insight into the future of the league, as well as some insight into some of the behind-the-scenes reasoning with comments made by the team's president and head coach. The Toros as an organization are viewing the 2026 season of domination as a successful outing and officially will be ending the season early so they can focus on better preparing for a planned 2027 season that includes an exciting new Toros-only training facility being launched in the meantime in San Antonio. Although the league has made some hollow statements about ancillary teams and planned relaunches for 2027, I have more faith in the Toros to actually commit to what they say, given the professionalism we've seen from them this season and again with the success they've shown on and off the field. As I said before, if there is a team in the CoFL that is capable of it, it would be the Toros. But from comments made by the Toros head coach Stan Bedwell, it seems like this decision to end the season early was not one they themselves made, but instead seems like that the league itself is going to be unable to continue into the postseason. According to Bedwell, the Continental Football League has canceled their 2026 playoffs because there are, quote, no Northern Division opponents to play against. If true, this is a shocking new development, as to my knowledge, the Cincinnati Dukes, the last remaining team in the Northern Division, have yet to make an official announcement about ending the season early. Although, with there only being one team in the Northern Division, it seems kinda obvious about which direction this is going. I've seen some folks online talk about how the Dukes are closing up shop and returning to the semi-pro league they originally left to join the CoFL, which sounds like it likely might be the case. With this announcement, though, the Continental Football League is only left with 2 remaining full-time members, both in the Southern Division, the Texas Syndicate and the Tall City Black Gold. I think it definitely goes without saying that this is not a good look at all for the league. Like I said in my previous video on this league, there is a reason many alternative football leagues aren't expected to make it to their championship game by default. It's unfortunately because of situations like this where startup leagues have big ambitions but don't spend the time they need to develop the financial and logistical backing they need for sustained success. This unfortunately might act as a lesson for many new alt football fans who might have been lured in by the stability of the UFL and now understand that their success might be an outlier. Unfortunately, the CoFL appears to be joining the ranks of other modern alternative football leagues that fail to reach their final championship game, ending early and closing their doors for the playoffs. In times like these, it is important to remember that the people who get hurt in these kind of situations most often are the players. It is very tempting to get into the drama behind the scenes and look at the drama online and the I told you so's, but it's important to take a second to think about the players on these teams and what they might be going through when leagues like these close. This is a big reason why we here at the Archive want to support stable leagues for these players that provide them with the payment and platform they need to succeed. The players in this league are not millionaires like you might see in the NFL or like what you see now in college football. These are guys that love the sport and are playing it as a side job and who are wanting to move from the semi-professional level to the professional level. These guys are passionate and they are really wanting to prove themselves. These are players who feel like they were missed or lost in the shuffle and want to elevate themselves. Many likely relocated for this opportunity and have put their body and their health on the line to play hard-nosed outdoor tackle football during some of the most hot and strenuous months of the year. And unfortunately, like we've seen many times in the past, players have gone without proper financial reimbursement for their time and their work, whether it's missed payments or other factors. I really hope that doesn't turn out to be the case for the Continental Football League, but unfortunately it is on the table when it comes to these kind of situations. My heart goes out to the players for all of this to crumble around them, as well as to the fans, many of which, because of this league's unique focus on fan support, may have donated money to sponsor and support their local team. So I really hope for their sakes that they've gotten what they've wanted to out of this, or that their team is positioned to return in the future, because, fan support is already so tough when it comes to these smaller teams that adding in the money factor, especially if it's something you're passionate about, can make it hurt twice as much. And it's for their sake that I hope if the league is really serious about relaunching in 2027, they are able to get their feet underneath themselves and learn from the mistakes of this 2026 season. If I were an advisor for the CoFL as they make this transition to the 2027 relaunch to save the brand's credibility, I would tell them first and foremost to study what the Toros did and try to apply that to all the teams. The San Antonio Toros, as I've said before, have been by far and away the most professional appearing team in this league. Not to disparage the other teams, they've just been a step above the others. They have had the most online presence, they've had the most fan engagement, some of the highest quality uniforms, and by far the best on-field performance in the league. To me, it's priority number one for the league to do a case study on this team and figure out how to best replicate it in their other markets for 2027. Next, I would want to do a serious evaluation of markets and owners that you'd want to carry over into 2027. And they really need to be serious about this because the owners of these teams are who need to be absolutely committed to the long-term vision of this goal if they want to succeed. You need to make sure that you are represented by franchises that can support and pay for their players and who aren't in this thinking that they'll make a ton of money immediately and make a quick buck. I'm not saying that's what happened here since I don't have any behind-the-scenes access to the CoFL HQ, but it seems to be a common trend in a lot of these startup leagues that there will be owners that expect to make their money back immediately or that don't have the money up front to support their teams. The focus for the CoFL's relaunch, if they are still able to do it in 2027, should be stability and credibility above all else. Everything, and I do mean everything, should be going into ensuring that the league plays competitive and quality football and makes it all the way to their championship game. It will no doubt be tougher to get folks on board after having to end the season early, even if it was reframed as a preview season, it is paramount that the 2027 season is successful if they want the CoFL to be a brand that survives. The league originally wanted to launch with 8 teams, and for a while 8 teams has been the default smallest starting size it seems like in modern spring or alternative football. But as unfun as it sounds, if the league absolutely needed to, it'd be better to have 6 teams play and complete the season than to have 8 teams play and to not complete the season. But after having to already do an effective delay of their launch to 2027, I think it'd be tragic if something unexpected occurred. Them not just waiting a full year to get their ducks in a row would cost them the ultimate branding failure. And again, as I said before and as I will continue to say, despite the assurances from the league, a 2027 season is not written in stone. And with all of these closures and with all of the turmoil that we've seen, trust for the league might be an all-time low, and events like this could very well spell the end of the CoFL. But with all that said, the future of the Continental Football League is still up in the air right now. As of the time of me writing the script, we are still waiting for an official word from the league about the fate of the 2026 season, but for anyone with eyes, it seems highly unlikely that we see them finish it at this stage. I do have some video scripts planned to cover more about this league and some teams, so if you're a Continental Football League fan or an alt football fan curious about this league, be sure to stay tuned for that kind of content. I expect the official announcement to release after this weekend's slate of games, probably like on Monday or Tuesday, and if the previous announcements are anything to go off of, it'll probably be positively spun and overpromise what to expect for next season, claiming that this mid-season stop is all part of the plan of their preview season. But with that being said, what are your thoughts on the CoFL and their tumultuous first season? Let me know in the comments below, as well as what you think the future will have in store for this startup league. It has been a disappointing story to follow, and I hope for good news, but I want to thank you for tuning into the archive and following along with us on this journey. It seems like this will be the first mid-season collapse we've covered on the channel, and with them being somewhat common in modern alternative football, it feels like a rite of passage in a way for this channel's rookie season. With all that said, thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you next week for more alt football content.